Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 95 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I'm your host, Brent Coley, an elementary principal in beautiful Southern California. And joining me today for, John, how many times is it? This isn't just a return guest. This
the third time or the
fourth? It might even be the fourth time. I think it's the fourth time. The only four-time guest, the one and only the one and only Dr. John Eick.
How do you like them apples right there? Oh, look at that. My phone's ringing now. Yeah, Dr. John Eick. This is the first time I've done a podcast where I'm a doctor. There you go. It's a super new experience. This is maybe our fourth time jamming together. Brent, thanks for having me on the show. You and I vox each other all the time on the Voxer. I feel like we talk all the time, but I'm excited to talk about today's topic, man. You kind of gave me a little peek behind the curtain of what the topic was, but I'm all in, man. I'm buckled up, ready for the roller coaster.
I love it. Yeah, I had this idea. I wrote a blog post about kind of what we're going to talk about today a few years ago. And I thought, gosh, this would be a fun podcast to do. And who better to do it with than John Eick? Yeah. So what we're going to do, and now the title of this episode is Changing the Conditions of the Test, which for anyone listening, it's like, what does that mean? Changing the conditions of the test. So to set the stage, well, first of all, for people who haven't listened to the previous 3 episodes, I almost forgot. John, tell us about yourself. Who are you? I know who you are, but for those of you who don't know, who's John Eick?
I'm 5'7" and 3/4. I love the beach trips, man. I'm a 23-year educator in the same zip code. I'm in North Sacramento. Our zip code has been ranked by the New York Times as one of the top 3 most diverse zip codes in the nation. It's the most beautiful place on the planet. I love where I live and where I work. My children have grown up in this district. I've been part of this district for a long time. I'm currently a superintendent of a little charter school. That means the principals work for me and I work directly for the board. But prior to that, I was a high school principal, high school teacher. I've been a director of instructional technology for a whole district, serving about 16,000 kids. So, I've been around the block a few times in a couple different positions, but they've all been right here in this little location in North Sacramento. It's a little neighborhood called Natomas, if anybody knows it. And, man, I'm that guy. No joke. Like, I'm that guy who just totally loves education. I just finished up my doctorate. People are like, why'd you go get a doctorate? You're like 50 years old. What do you need another college degree for? I'm like, I don't really know. I feel like I lost a bet or something. I was okay, I'll do this. And I love it. I nerd out on all the edu things. And so I'm in the right job for me. And I am surrounded by amazing family and amazing coworkers and an incredible community. So that's me, man. I'm John Eick, and I'm super excited to be here and talk edu.
Oh, that's awesome. And I watched you defend your dissertation, and it was a joy. I mean, my mind was blown with everything. I mean, you learned a ton, and I learned a ton from watching you and listening to you. So congrats on that, my friend.
Thanks, brother. That was a cool experience. Thanks for being there.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Honored. So, all right. So let's jump into the topic today. We're going to take a page out of someone from our PLN, a podcast, Teaching Keating, Weston Kieschnick. I know that we've both listened to that.
Love that guy.
It's awesome. Weston and his wife, Molly, have a podcast called Teaching Keating. So Weston, if you're listening to this, love the podcast. Thank you very much. What they do, if you haven't heard it, is they take movies, television shows, and they relate it to education. They take the theme from the movie, they take the characters, what have you, and they relate it to education. We're going to take a page out of that. Homage, is that how you pronounce it? To Weston. We're going to take a page. I'm going to play a clip from in just a sec. And we're going to basically take that. You'll see where I'm going to go. Now, the clip, the movie, we're going old school, John.
Oh, yeah. Bring it.
Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Exactly. The Wrath of Khan. Now, for anyone listening who's going, oh, my gosh, he's a Trekkie. No, I'm not. I'm not a Trekkie. You don't have to be a Trekkie. Just trust me. Stay with me. Don't hit the stop. Here we go. So I'm going to set the stage. It's a 45-second clip. But here's the stage. We've all heard of Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk, the captain of the Starship Enterprise. So this clip, before it's talking about when he was in the academy, when he was basically learning to be a star person, I mean, learning to be a captain. Yeah, he was in the academy and he had to take a test called the Kobayashi Maru, which is basically a test that put cadets in a position, a no-win situation. The whole test was designed, what is this person going to do when they're faced with a no-win scenario? So it's basically a test that you could not pass because they wanted to see what you would do. It's a test that you could not pass, except Kirk passed it. It's an unpassable test, except he did. So I'm going to play you a clip right now. And in this clip, somebody else is asking him, hey, Captain, can you tell me about what happened here? So let me go ahead and play this clip, and then we'll come back and we will talk about it.
Sir, may I ask you a question?
What's on your mind, Lieutenant?
The Kobayashi Maru, sir.
Are you asking me if we're playing out that scenario now?
On the test, sir. Will you tell me what you did? I would really like to know.
Lieutenant, you are looking at the only Starfleet cadet who ever beat the no-win scenario.
How?
I reprogrammed the simulation so it was possible to rescue the ship.
What?
He cheated.
I changed the conditions of the test. Got a commendation for original thinking. I don't like to lose.
Then you never faced that situation. Faced death.
I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
He looks so young in that clip.
Is it crazy? Is it crazy? Yeah, it's like we're much older than he is in that clip there, which is
crazy,
a little disconcerting. So I love that clip because he passes an unwinnable test, and somebody says, "How'd you do it?" And he says, "I reprogrammed the computer so that I could pass it." And they said, "Oh, you cheated." No, I changed the conditions of the test. So this got me thinking. It's kind of like if education, the institution that we know, is the test, how can we change the conditions of the test? Essentially, how can we rewrite the unwritten rules of education? Those things that have either always been, and they've always been that way, or we've accepted them as the right way to do things, and maybe we should stop accepting those as the right way to do things. So what I asked you to do, and what you and I have both done, is we've come up with a list of 2 or 3 things that we think, hey, this is the way it's always been. This is the unwritten rule. This is the condition of the test, but it shouldn't be. How could we reprogram to win the no-win scenario?
I love it. And I hadn't seen the clip, and you told me on the Voxer, hey, we're going to be talking about kind of rewriting edu. But now that I've watched the clip, it's so dramatic, right? It's William Shatner, like, I don't like to lose. I love it, man. I love it.
And I just love it because I think we need to be more like Captain Kirk, because I jotted 3 things down. Like he said, I don't like to lose. And what if we translated that as, I hate it when students don't learn?
Yeah, right.
And he says, I don't believe in a no-win scenario, which translate that like, I don't accept the notion that all students can't learn.
Yeah.
And lastly, which is the podcast theme, I changed the conditions of the test, which really means I did whatever it took for students to learn, whatever it takes. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, I mean, let's undo
those things that have always been, but don't necessarily shouldn't be. So You want to start, or you want me to start?
Gosh, you want Rochambeau? We're on Zoom. We could rock paper scissors.
Let's do that.
Yeah, okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, shoot.
1, 2, 3, shoot. Got it.
Right? I'll shoot.
Ready?
1, 2, 3, shoot. There's a little lag in the. Oh, yeah, scissors. Okay. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Are you
you got it. You got it. You win. So you go first.
For whoever's driving their car right now, I think, are you guys really doing rock paper?
We really just did rock. This could be the first rock paper scissors in a podcast. I don't know. Maybe.
I hope you get that award for that. That was well played. Well played. Yeah. So it's interesting, right? This whole idea of like, how would you undo the rules to the test to make sure that, that Captain Kirk, meaning our kids, could win the test? One of the things that I was kind of riffing on as I thought about this is, there's this really cool book called Tinkering Toward Utopia. It's by Eick and Cuban. And their whole premise is, if it's an easy read, go check it out. It is Tinkering Toward Utopia. And their whole thing is like, there's this thing called the grammar of school, the way that we speak school, the language of school, the constructs of school that were really established at the beginning of public ed in America. And for 200 years, really, we haven't been able to break those constructs. There's certain grammar of school that we haven't been able to break. And part of this is what we're talking about today, right? Like, how do you make reform in edu that is actually breaks the foundational pieces so that you can customize, personalize, do better for kids, and not just like tinkering with the fringe, like, oh, let's change, a little bit on the fringe of the conversation. No, how do we get really to the root of it? And one of the things I think that's at the root of it is this concept of, have you heard, it's a great little a YouTube TED Talk about the jagged profile. And it says this, like, it says that in edu, because when you're teaching your own child something, you have one child, or maybe you have 2 kids or 3 kids at home, you really know your child. And so you know your child's strengths, you know your child's weaknesses. Now, when you're teaching the neighborhood kids, you got 3 or 4 kids, and it gets a little harder. When you got 25 kids in your class, you're trying to teach 25 different human beings a singular topic. And so you have to start like teaching toward the average, like being like, well, most kids will get it this way. Like, I know I can't do it 25 different ways. I can't. It's impossible to teach the concept of fractions 25 different ways for 25 different kids. We only got 7 hours in the day or whatever it is. Yeah. This is the part that I would want to break. This idea that we have to find the average, that we recognize every student as an individual and go, hey, look, they have what's called a jagged profile. And by jagged, it means they have strengths. My strengths are Brent's weaknesses, and Brent's strengths are my weaknesses, and our profiles don't line up well. So I don't know how to solve that without a massive influx of increased staffing. So if I looked at the classroom and I go, hey, look, you go back to like the James Gardner, like this multiple intelligences concept that we all learned at one point. Like, okay, Brent needs to learn kinesthetic, Johnny needs to learn it musically, Susie needs to learn it visually, and Bobby needs to learn it auditorily. Well, hey, no teacher can do that. I am sorry. Like, I don't care. I don't care who you are, super teacher, you can't do every lesson that personalized. So, hey, if we're really breaking it, Brent, if we're like reprogramming the system, then I want to infuse education with like 5 times the staffing and have teacher teams assigned to a classroom. So you can break them up in their small groups and have certificated staff really teaching to the strengths of each child. In a real personalized, because look, I don't think we could do that today with the funding we have. But if we're breaking the system, I put more people in the system so that kids can get the personalized instruction that they need to meet their personal strengths. Because otherwise, when you start teaching toward the average, you immediately fall into a deficit model. You're like, oh, I'm using all these visual cues, but Brent's not a visual kid. Brent has a deficit. So now Brent's a deficit kid, as opposed to if I had the right amount of people on staff, I could teach to Brent's strength, which is kinesthetic, and now it's not a deficit model anymore. So that was a long way around a silly idea, but it is, how do we personalize for kids without killing teachers? Yeah. The poor teacher's trying to do it all, and it's impossible.
No, I love that. We talk about lowering class size, small group instruction, the importance of stuff like that. And there's been research that said like lowering class size by itself doesn't if you lower class size, but you do the same thing, what you just talked about, still teaching to the middle, it's not going to make a difference. But if you lower in class size because you had multiple teachers that enable them to do more personalized instruction, now that's a game changer.
Yeah, and I think getting back at it, I mean, I think that in reality, if you were to lower class sizes for the purpose of personalizing for kids, and teachers had the appropriate training, the appropriate tools, the appropriate strategies to do that, that's a step in the direction of my crazy, outlandish idea. Because who could really hire 5 teachers for 25 kids? But if you could do anything, I think that's why you would do that.
I love it.
What do you got, man? Redraft the test.
Okay, so mine is, and it's something that traditionally, probably when you and I came in, it's that classrooms don't have to be quiet.
Oh,
that silence doesn't necessarily equal engagement.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that you will agree with me. Like, you've walked through how many hundreds, thousands of classrooms, and historically it was the type of thing that, well, when the principal walks through, you better be quiet, because kids, be quiet when the principal, because that shows that, hey, look, they're quiet, they're working, they're on task. But I think what we found over the years, and the research, just because they're quiet doesn't mean they're engaged. Just because they're quiet doesn't mean they're learning. Just because because how many times have you walk into a class and you see the quiet kiddo, his head is down, he's asleep, he's fiddling with the ruler in his desk or what? I mean, he's not making any noise. He's not disrupting others' learning, but he's not engaged himself or herself. And I just think that we need to get away from that mindset that quiet is good, because there's a difference between productive noise and off-task noise. And you can tell it very quickly when you walk into a classroom.
I think I would have done better in school as a young learner if we were using the models that I see today. The 21st century learning, the 4 C's: collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication. Like, when we lean on the 4 C's, then that collaboration is a part of learning. That communication is a part of learning. The out loud productive creativity is a part of learning. I would have done much better in that environment, because I was the kid in the corner trying to get quiet so you can learn, John. I'm like, well, if quiet's the only
but
way,
that's not how we learn.
Yeah, I mean, if quiet was the only way we learn, we'd go to church and just read the Bible. You'd show up and it'd be no one on the stage speaking. Like, why do you just read? Like, it's so true, Brent. Like, and there is time for quiet productivity.
Sure.
And I love me some messy learning. I love it.
Yeah.
I go into a science class and kids got, small groups going, they're rocking it with materials and learning hands-on. I think we have entered into the best time in edu. This is a time when experimentation and these types of models for productivity are so different than they were, when you and I went to school.
Yeah.
We're exactly the same age, so we graduated at exactly the same time.
Exactly. All right. Back at you. Your turn.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I think maybe what I'm about to lay down is in part couples with what you talked about, where, quietness doesn't mean productivity. I really think that when we talk about, redrafting the test or retooling the test, let's talk about that word, the test. Let's talk about assessment. I got to tell you, I am such a believer that the big change in edu, one of the big changes in edu is the adoption of authentic assessment. That assessments, again, it goes back to that personalization. It goes back to that not teaching to the average. It goes back to, like, you might want to assess Johnny one way and Susie a different way. That you and I, it's okay for us to demonstrate mastery in different ways. Again, this makes it super hard for the teacher. So I'm just going to be like, sorry. I know that the teacher's like, I don't want to test 25 different ways. And that's really not what I'm calling, but I am saying that, like, part of me says, hey, great state of California, let me introduce you to Mrs. Smith. She went and got a college degree. She got a college degree in early elementary ed. Then she went out and got a specialized credential that was overseen by the great state of California. She's credentialed. Then the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing credentialed her and said, you are an expert in education. And part of that expertise is you understand how to measure mastery. Now, oh, we don't trust you to assess the kid and tell us whether or not that kid is past your grade level. We're going to give you a fill in the blank bubble test that, like, I'm like, hey, these people are credentialed. Let them develop and utilize authentic assessments, and then have some formulaic way to report out those assessments to the state. So we can say in Mrs. Smith's class, 12 of the kids exceeded standards, 9 of the kids met standards, and 3 of them are approaching standard. But like, why don't we trust Mrs. Smith to do that? Or why don't we train Mrs. Smith to make sure she can do that, so we can remove the inauthentic assessment and allow authentic assessment to tell us who these kids are? Because there are kids out there walking on in our institutions that are brilliant, and they have no idea. And their parents don't know how brilliant they are, because we keep telling them, they answered number 7 wrong on the multiple choice question. I'm like, hey, let's find another way for kids to demonstrate mastery, and let's put some of the power back in the expert in the room. And I bet we'll find less deficit thinking and more like, wow, this kid demonstrated mastery in a way that I guess if we had not given them the opportunity, we wouldn't have known they know what they know.
Love it. And gosh, we're so, I mean, I love it because it's engagement too. I've had similar conversations with our teachers about what you just said, letting them demonstrate mastery. And if there's more than one way to demonstrate mastery, whether it's book report, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the traditional book report, but could they show their knowledge of the book or whatever it is by creating a video or writing a poem or writing a rap or something? I mean, like, if we start with what is the learning objective?
Yeah.
Start there. And backward plan. What's the learning objective? And now say, show me that you can do this. How you show me is up to you. But imagine, I always come back to the Minecraft. I mean, if you've seen the video of the 4th grade student who built the San Diego de Ocala mission in Minecraft. Have you ever seen that?
I've not seen the video, but I've heard about it. And since my daughter and I play a little Minecraft, I'm like, I could totally see building a mission. Is it legit? Is it like,
if you go to YouTube and just do a search for Minecraft San Diego mission, it's probably, the last time I checked, it'll probably be the first hit. You've got a 9-year-old who basically built in Minecraft the entire mission. Epic. And then does a fly-through tour talking about everything that he learned about the Padres and how they worked with the Native Americans, and this is the well, and this is how they fed them, and it's about a 6 or 7 minute video, and the kid, he demonstrates his knowledge of learning about the California Standard in 4th grade, which is learning about the California missions. Now compare that to building a Sugar Cube mission, or going to Michael's and buying the kit, which I come back to. It's like, well, what was the learning objective?
Right. Was
it to be able to use a glue gun? Or was it to demonstrate knowledge of the history of Californians? I mean, and if that's the learning objective, going to Michael's and building the kit, not the skills that are necessarily to meet that learning objective. So if we align the learning objective to, and if you just imagine, John, if you said your homework is, or you get to choose, if you want to build it in Minecraft, build it in Minecraft. Kids, what? I get to, my homework is to do Minecraft?
Minecraft? I'm going to tell my mom. Would you write me a note from my mom?
Exactly. I mean,
what's cool about that, and this is kind of off topic, but like also that kid producing that and putting it on YouTube creates authentic audience, right? Yes. And so as a student, I'm like, okay, I'll put together the sugar cubes because only my teacher, Mrs. Smith's going to see it. And whatever, I love Mrs. Smith; she's great. But you're like, oh wait, this is going on my YouTube channel.
Yeah,
well, I'm blowing it up. This is going to be a killer example of what I know. Right? It's so funny.
I'm just pulling it up here. I just pulled it up on YouTube. 70,000 views. It's a 4-minute video. But this kid, it's a 4-minute video. But if you watch it, this kid, he knows his stuff. And I just, it's awesome. So, okay. My second one, kind of piggybacking on what you said about assessment, and which kind of that authentic assessment there. And I come back to, and I mentioned the word homework. That's what I would say is homework. There's a conversation that we've had with my staff is reflecting upon homework practices. Now, historically, there's always been homework.
Sure.
Everybody gives homework. And why? Because we have to, right? Because if we don't give homework, kids aren't learning. Except the research isn't there to back that up. I mean, Alfie Cohn's done a bunch of work there. I mean, like, especially at the elementary levels, there's zero research, that supports academic, that homework leads to academic achievement. So I don't want to turn this into a complete homework rant against homework, but my question would be, if you're giving homework, it's to ask yourself the question, why am I giving what I'm giving? Question number 2, what am I doing with it once I get it done? Yeah. And if the answer to the first question is, why am I giving what I'm giving? B, well, because it's what I've always done. That's not good enough.
Sure.
And number 2, what am I doing with it? Like, am I giving feedback on what they're doing? And because how often have we had those packets that are sent home? Kids do packets, and what happens? It's a 30-page packet, and it's Friday night, and you got all these packets, and you're doing it right now. It's like check, and then where does it go? Goes in the wastebasket, right? It goes in the trash. So I contend is, if you're not getting feedback, if they practice and they did a 30-page packet, what if they're doing it wrong?
Yeah.
What if they were doing it wrong, and now they've just practiced the wrong way for 30 pages? I mean, the example I use is the word withdrawal. The word withdrawal, WITHDRAWAL. For the longest time, I spelled it WITHDRAWL.
I think, as you said, AL, I was like, oh, is there an A in there?
And for the longest, I spelled it the wrong way. And it wasn't until just a few years ago that I was typing it in Word and got the little red squiggly underneath that said it's spelled wrong. And I'm like, what? What do you mean this is spelled wrong? I've been spelling it incorrectly virtually my entire life. Why? Because I practiced. Every time I wrote it in my checkbook when I was growing up in college, I wrote cash withdrawal and I spelled it wrong, and I never got feedback. I never got feedback until Microsoft gave me the little red squiggly line that said, you're wrong. That's not how you spell withdrawal. But I just think that, especially in the light of where we are right now, the pandemic has shined the light on the inequity that exists in our school communities. Because right now, we saw literally in virtual classrooms, some students have a lot of support at home.
Yeah.
And others don't.
Yeah.
So if we're assigning homework, if we're assigning take-home projects, assuming that there's the support that would be required to do it at home, and it's not. I think now, we've always talked about it before. It was in a bubble. Well, there's not a lot of equity, and not everybody has the same support. I think one of the positives of the pandemic, we've actually seen it now.
Yeah.
We have seen the homes that mom and dad are sitting right there during virtual instruction because they can, but the other house, mom's working second shift, dad's working third shift. Yeah. Kiddos on her own and doing the best she can. So if we're assuming that the help is there, we got to stop assuming that. So, boy, that was a long rant on.
No, it's good riff though. It's good riff. And you know what? The other thing is, I get the idea of it's in the grammar of schooling that practice makes perfect, that we think that homework is practice. So, hey, kids need practice. But the recent research around learning really exposes that learning is a social act, that we know that learning is social. And I think it's hard to conceptualize. What do you mean learning is a social act? You mean that I have to have kids socializing to learn? My classroom of mayhem. No. Feedback is a social act. I write the word withdrawal. some form of feedback, gives me this social interaction that corrects my behavior, and then I don't write it wrong the next time. So yeah, homework is practice, and that's totally part of the grammar of school. We've always done it the way we've always done it. Practice makes perfect, but it doesn't unless that social component reinforces the correct behaviors. And so, yeah, man, your rant is super legit. I love the homework piece. I love it.
Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Perfect.
It's true.
Perfect practice makes perfect. But if you're practicing the wrong way, continually, and you don't get the feedback, you become an expert at doing it the wrong way.
Look at my golf game.
There we go. Mine too. And spelling the word withdrawal. I had to I still have the hardest time. It's like, how is that word spelled? Because I did it for 30 years the wrong way. So
it's good, man. It's good.
So, do you have a final one?
I got the last one. I got my last one. And I'll try and lay it out. And we're probably pressed for time because you and I, man, we could talk
we could.
We could go hours. But I think that somewhere in the grammar of school, somewhere back in the beginning of time, we decided that tracking was okay by ability. Somebody decided that tracking or segregating was okay based on all types of identities. And I am a 100% wholehearted believer in full inclusivity. Typically I utilize that word to identify students with disabilities. But, in this current era where we talk about equities and inequities and systemic inequities for students of color, for multilingual students, for students of poverty, this word inclusivity should call out more than just how we structure our lesson plans, but really the way we analyze and observe our own biases. Like, how do I believe a student looks? It then starts to manifest in my classroom of who gets preferential treatment in my classroom. So I think the easiest way to call that out, though, is around the topic of students with disabilities. I believe that we all benefit when children are all in class together. And to say that this child with a cognitive disability belongs in a separated classroom from their grade level peers is not true inherently for that child or for the peers. Now, again, I go back to I am not saying to the grade level teacher, hey, Mrs. Smith, you're going to have 28 students in your class this year. One of them is going to have Down syndrome. One of them is going to be a student with severe, moderate to severe disabilities, like cerebral palsy, and 26 of your students are going to be more typical developmentally. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, we have to staff appropriately for full inclusivity, and we have to train appropriately. And it can't, but my goodness, I can't imagine a world where it's okay to continue saying, hey, you know what? Your kid doesn't really fit in with what we consider to be average. And so we're going to send your kid to a different place. I know we lean on that for a long time and said, well, it's better for them and it's better for everybody else. But there is brilliant research out right now that says that's totally incorrect. And it's been my personal experience. Brent, I could tell you stories that will bring tears to your eyes. I'll tell you of a student who came to my school as an 8th grader, and I lead a K-8. And this child had been secluded in special education in a room. She nonverbal, comes to my school in 8th grade, and we say, hey, just so you know, she's been mainstreamed in our 8th grade class. The first day she came to our school, she didn't make it past the flagpole without bursting into tears and tantruming. And you know what? 6 months later, she was at the middle school dancing, holding hands with her best 8th grade friends, all these little girls who were just best friends. At the end of the year, she was in the talent show up on stage doing the school dance. She learned to write her name and to read some single syllabic words that she had never had access to before. And partly it was because she was mainstreamed around people who just kind of were like, oh, you're a human being, so are we. You want to be friends? And man, I got to tell you, dude, I'm a 23-year veteran. Nothing has moved my heart more than what I saw in that little case study right there. And I think to myself, if I had gotten that child in my class, in my school as a kindergartner, what could we have done before?
What would be,
high school? And so I just say that it's an old template that says we separate kids based on what we believe are ability tracking or any other type of identifier. A more modern concept for me is, hey, kids belong with their peers, and we need to put the supports in place to make sure those kids are successful. And that means I'm not putting it all on the one classroom teacher. If I need 12 teachers in that classroom to get 28 students across the finish line, then that's what we need. But to me, there's nothing more important because, hey, I'm a father. And if you're going to tell me that my kid doesn't belong, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Hey, man, these are children, and children belong in classrooms. And so that's kind of my rant of like, how would you break the system? How would you rewrite the test? I would say that all means all, and that it's not up to the families to accept something less than mainstream. It is up to the schools to redesign mainstream to be accepting and appropriate for all.
Gosh, preach it, man. That's awesome. I love what you said. Oh, you're a human being. I'm a human being too. You want to be friends.
Yeah.
Because that's what we see. I mean, how many, and look, the examples that you said of look what happened at the end of the year. She's doing the talent show. She's at the dance. And it goes back to what you said at the beginning, your first point, which was staff it appropriately. Because you're not saying, and I love how you went back to it more than once. We're not just saying put it on the teacher, because you still have to provide support. And if you need 12 teachers in that classroom, then okay, provide the support, but without denying them the opportunity to be with their peers.
This whole topic of this podcast today for me, is if we're rewriting edu, it can't be putting more stuff on the people that are in place today. If we're rewriting education, you got to start from the ground up. You got to start from funding and staffing and construction and facilities, all of it, because what we typically do in edu is go, hey, we got a great new idea. Teachers, do more with less. Yeah. And it ain't going to work.
Yeah. No, I love it. I'm going to give one more quick, and it's going to be a quick one. And it kind of just the way that we've always done things doesn't have to be the way that we continue to do things. And I think, again, the current pandemic has shown us, hey, well, you know what? There's actually some more efficient ways to do things.
Yeah.
You and I, you're in Northern California. I'm in Southern California. We are speaking, looking at each other via Zoom right now. Right. Now, a year and a half ago, the world didn't even know what Zoom was. Now, you and I are communicating, having a great conversation. We've had IEPs this way. Yep. We ended up having back to school night this way. We had our parent conferences this way. So when we go back to normal, the air quotes, and again, our theme next year is not going to be, it's going to be back to better. Yeah. I heard somebody say that, and I love it because, you had normal, but normal didn't work for everybody. So let's go back to better, because we now have new tools in our toolbox. And I'm going to use Zoom as just a very simple example, but how many meetings do you end up going to in a typical week pre-pandemic? Could some of those meetings be held virtually? I think they could. And now it eliminates the 20-minute drive each way to the district office to go to that. I mean, could we continue to do that? What about the parent conferences where the parent virtual, actually, it worked really well for them, and they don't have a car. They can't get here. Could we continue to offer, again, maybe we have you want in person or you want virtual. Now we're offering the best of both worlds. We're giving those parents, we're giving those families a choice. School site council, same type thing. We had to do that virtually this past year. Next year, looks like we're going to continue to do that virtually because it's easier for so many of the parents on the council who don't have to trek around town and do that. Yeah. We can. So I just think just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way. Now we could, but if there's a better way, keep doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. It would interject with a silly.
I'm done. Go.
But we use this in my team all the time. We go, hey, is that pot roast? And our story on pot roast is this, right? This guy goes out and gets a pot roast and brings it home and puts it on the butcher block and cuts the end off and cuts the other end off and throws the ends of the pot roast away and then throws it in the pan and starts cooking. His wife goes, hey man, what why do you cut the ends off the pot roast? He goes, oh, I don't know. I got this recipe from my mom. It's the way she always did it. So one night he calls his mom. He says, hey, Mom, I chop the ends off the pot roast and throw them away. Why do I do that? Why did you? She goes, oh, because my pot roast pan was too small. So I always cut the ends off. And so this guy for years has been cutting the ends of the pot roast off. So my team always says, this little joke we always say is like, is that just pot roast? Are we just doing what we've always done because we learned it to do it that way, but it no longer applies to the size pan we have today? And we've been asking ourselves a lot as we come out of the pandemic, like, hey, dude, is that just pot roast? Should we keep doing our board meetings on YouTube? Because nobody came to our board meetings in the past. And now we're getting like 150 views on the board.
Yes.
Why would we go back?
Yes.
Why? Isn't it more transparent this way? Haven't we just reinvented it in a better way? So yeah, man, I love it. Let's not always do it the way we've always done it. Let's not do the pot roast.
I'm going to be borrowing that. What a great example of, well, it's because my pan wasn't big enough.
Right.
So you're telling me I didn't have to do that, or I was throwing away perfectly good pot roast just because the pan wasn't big. I love it. I love it.
It's good, man.
Well, once again, this did not disappoint, John. Thank you, man. I loved riffing with you on this. Thank you for taking the time, my friend.
Hey, brother, it is always a pleasure. I love talking edu with you, and I'm a big fan of you and your podcast. I can't believe this is your 95th episode. It is an honor to be here jamming with you and to share the screen with Captain Kirk. I mean, that was epic, man.
This was fun. Again, this is one that I've wanted to do for a while, and I appreciate. I as I always do every time I talk with you, I have learned something new. So thank you. I appreciate it. And for anyone again who is unfamiliar with John Eick, for the couple of people who how can they learn? How can they learn with John Eick?
Hi, and thanks for tuning in to Learn with John Eick podcast. Yeah, I got a little podcast. It's called Learn with John Eick podcast. It's spelled Eick. It looks like Ick, but it's Eick. So you can look up Learn with John Eick, Eick, or you can find me on the Twitters at John_Eick. Yeah, man, I'm out there. Anybody wants to jam edu? If I said anything that tickles your fancy, you want to jam on, I'd love to jam with anybody on any edu topic.
Awesome. Yeah, I love your podcast. I love it, man.
Thanks,
for anyone who doesn't, you got to listen to it. It's just John doing what he just did. Just you get to learn with John Eick. It's awesome.
Just
riffs, and it is awesome. So thank you, John, and for everyone listening, thank you. I mean, 95 episodes. It's crazy. And as I typically say, it's like, and even if nobody listened,
right,
it's okay. My mom listens, my dad listens. And I get something out of talking with guests. So thank you for listening. If you haven't done so, be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or you can listen on my website at brentcoley.com. If you're looking for a summer read, I've got a book called Stories of Edu Influence, real life stories from the classroom and front office that will remind you, especially in this year right now, so easy for us to be like, gosh, did I make a difference with these students or the adults that I serve? And the answer is a resounding, yes, you did, more than you realize. And that's what I tried to do with sharing the stories in my book. So you can get that on Amazon, called Stories of Edu Influence. John, thank you once again. Have a great summer. Because we're coming up on summer as we're recording. Have a great summer. For those of you listening, you have a great summer. And until episode 96, have a good one.